Hi guys. I am gone today. I'm helping with the AP Stats project, and then Stephanie has an MRI scheduled for her hip. So I just wanted to finish up the notes with you, which you're going to find out are pretty easy. Just remember a quick review of yesterday. We had a lot of terms that we had to come to know. Plus, we talked about histograms, dot plots, stem and leaf plots. We're going to talk about box and whisker plots. But just remember some few terms that we're talking about. We talked about a mean, which is, remember, if we looked up above, that is like your average of the data, which we know. The median is the middle piece of data, like the exact data in the middle. It's called the second quartile. It's also known as the 50th percentile, because that 50% of the data is below that number. So it's right there at 50%. Then we talked about the shape of our distributions of data, which we could see in our stem and leaf plot. We can see it in the dot plot. We can see it in the histogram. We talked about how they could be uniform. It's about the same going all the way across. We talked about skewed, where you'd put it like, if you were to draw in a bubble, it would come out and look long like a tail. We talked about modes, where we talked about unimodal, which it looks like you have one, or if it looks like you have two type of modes or clusters of information. We talked about what the range is for data. It's your max value data value minus your min data value. We talked about your interquartile range, and that's going from your third quartile minus your first quartile. And then we talked about the standard deviation. It really tells you how far a piece of data is from the mean of your whole group of data. So then we talked about the different terms that you had to have, and we talked a little bit more about what standard deviation, and then we talked about and ended with the 5-number summary. And a 5-number summary always reports the minimum value, the maximum value, the first and third quartile, and the median. So basically it divides your data up into quarters, is basically what it does. It's the start and the end, and where your middle 25% and 75th percentile are. Now, we talked about how you can find that easily by hand by looking at it, but it obviously, a lot of times you're not going to have just 5 or 6 pieces of information. You're going to have like hundreds or thousands of pieces of information. So then you're going to want to do it on the calculator. So like I said, the calculator's to the rescue. Now, here's where I hope you guys did not delete your list from your calculator. Because remember, list 1 was used with our Super Bowl example. It's the total combined points for Super Bowl teams at the Super Bowl. And then remember, list 2 and list 3 represented the height of singers in a choir. So that's what we're working with. So we're going to find from our Super Bowl example, it's 5-number summary on your calculator. So here's what you need to do first. So first you go to your stat key, which we worked with. Instead of going to edit, you're going to go over to calc, and then you go to number 1, and it should say next to number 1, variable statistics. So 1 var statistics is what it's called. Then what you do is, it should open up once you go there, and it looks like this screen right here. So what you do is you put in list 1. And how do I insert list 1? So if it doesn't say list 1 to start with, remember you can put list in, or by going second and then number 1 on your calculator. All right, let me show you that on the calculator real quick. All right, so let's go stat, calc. There's the one var stats, and I want to put list 1 in, so you just go second number 1, list 1. And remember, the frequency list, we don't have one in this one because each piece of data was entered in individually. So we clear that one, go down, and then you just go calculate. And if you do that, if you notice, you're going to get 2 screens. All right, so I'm going to go and close this here if I can. Let me go. And you should see the screen. This is what you see when you first open it up. Remember a few things what it has here. Remember, X bar is the term that we use, and X bar stands for the mean of the data. This right here stands for the standard deviation of the data. Remember, that's how far away from the mean on average a piece of data is. And then we have the number of pieces of data. Remember, there was 42 Super Bowl games, the first 42 that we were looking at. And then you can start seeing the data, like the minimum X value. Oh, that's the minimum value. That's 21 points. And then if you scroll down, you will notice right here, gives you its 5-number summary. You have your min, your max, your quartile 1, your quartile 3, and your median. So let's put down what we know based off of this information. Or what is the mean? Well, the mean was going to be 45.33, and you can keep going, but we'll just go 3 points. All right, I'm going to go 3, just make sure we're staying the same. What is the range? Well, remember the range is your max value, which was 75, subtracting your minimum value, which is 21, and that's going to end up giving us 54 points. What is the median? Remember that is your second quartile. 50% of your data lies below that, and it's going to be at 45 points. What is your IQR? Remember, IQR is your third quartile minus your first quartile, and that is just going to be 55 minus, what do we got here, 37? Yeah, just looking at our quartiles here. 55 minus 37, and that's going to give us 18 points. So between your second, basically your middle 50% of your data is within 18 points of each other, is really what it's saying. Standard deviation, well, that's going to end up being 13.587 points. And that's on average how far away people are from the mean. So wasn't that really easy, and it did all the work for you. But again, you can do this with 2 lists, where remember you have your first list is your data, and then the second list tells you how many times that piece of data shows up. So basically, remember, this would be like your list 1, this would be your list, list 2, and this would be your list 3. This is called the frequency list. But it's really doing the exact same process that we did for one list. So your initial start does the same thing. So I go to my calculator, and you're going to go stat, calculate, go to number 1, hit enter, and then you put in your 2 lists. This time I want list 2 because that's the list of my data. That tells me what's my actual measurement. So that would be second list 2. So we go second number 2. You see how it goes in red. Then the frequency list, remember, is the right-hand column of our data right here. See if I don't know if this will let me move it over or not. And so we're going to say that's our list 3. And you guys also entered that in block class, so yesterday. So we go second number 3, and then we go calculate. And notice it does all the calculations for us. All right, so with this, and this is going to be annoying here real quick, so please forgive me as I get stuff set up here. After doing the same values that we did before, let's figure out the 5-number summary, and then also find your mean and your IQR. So what is the minimal value that I have on here? Well, my min value, min x, that's going to be 60, and this should be all in inches, remember? Your quartile 1, and let's arrow down. Remember, we want to arrow down so we can see our 5-number summary all together, is going to be 65 inches. Your median is going to be 66 inches. Then our third quartile is at 70 inches, and our max value is at 76 inches. So remember, that tells us our minimum, our max, our quartiles. So basically, we're going to be using that data in a little bit to make what's called a whisker and our box and whisker plot, or whisker and box plot. It just matters who's saying it. But I also need to find the mean. So let's remember where the mean is. Remember, the mean is always your x bar. So it's the very top piece of value. That means average. So anytime you see x bar, Latin stats, you'll hear y bar. But you'll also have weird ones like y hat, x hat, which total different meanings. So just keep x bar here. All right, and then you're going to get your mean is going to be 67.115 inches. IQR, remember, that's going to be your min and max your quartile 3 minus your quartile 1. And so, and notice all my stuff is labeled. The statistics you have to label. You got to express and communicate what you really know. So we have here 70 minus 65. That should be 5 inches. So think about this. 50% of my data is within 5 inches of each other. 50% of my data is smack dab between 5 inches. Kind of cool. All right. So we're going to keep on going. And we have one last display I want to talk to you guys about. Let's see if I can get this to go down. Nope, it does not want to go down. So we're going to do a different route here. Do that instead. We're going to do what's called the box and whisker plot. Okay, so with box and whisker plot, it is actually known also as a box plot. And this is actually what you guys always see on Academy Central. When you look at assignment details, you want to know if you did compared to everybody else. That is actually a box plot or a box and whisker plot that shows up. All right. So what does a box plot do? It uses the 5-number summary to show spread of the data. Now, it's not going to show shape, so it's not going to show the modes, like the humps for the data, but it will show how spread out it is. So remember, it doesn't give the shape like any of the other displays of the distribution, like histograms, dot plots, or stem and leaf plot. So this is basically how a whisker box and whisker plot is drawn. So you have, when you draw it, the way that you actually draw it is you still draw to scale. So there will be some measure that you're doing here. So like if I was doing the choir stuff, that would be like in inches, okay? So the measure here, and this will tell you where the data goes within the measure. This would always be your median, so you always draw it first, and then you draw in your upper quartile, your third quartile, and your lower quartile, which is your first quartile. And you always draw the box first. Then you do what's called the whiskers of the box. The whiskers of the box, you actually have what's called a whisker range, or how far you can go, or which is 1.5 times the interquartile range away from the mean or the median. But what's really cool here, it's normally your lowest observation and your highest observation. Now, there is a little bit more to that than just that type of box plot, but that's the basic idea of being able to get it. And then you draw it out. Now, you can have ones where it looks really unique. Like for instance, your median could look very much off to the left, while you have a long stretch of data off to the right, which tells me I have a very wide spread for my upper 50% of data. When I had a smaller spread, they're closer together with my lower percent. You could also have very like small boxes, but really long whiskers on both sides, which tells you that the extremes of the min and max values are very spread out. So it gives you a lot of information, like how close your data is. It's easy to compare to other pieces of data. It's just a good communication tool. So let me show you how cool it is, because the calculator, once again, can do all your work. So we're going to go back to the singer's example just because honestly, I messed up when I was making the notes, so it was easy just to keep this one going. So we're going to use the idea of our frequency table. Remember, we're also going to be using list 2 and list 3 just like before. But here's where it's different from histogram, okay? So it looks just like a histogram, but notice I go one spot further over. So like when I'm working on this one, I'm going to go second stat plot. I'm going to go on. Notice I still have list 2 and list 3 from the last time we did a histogram. Oops, I want to keep that on. Arrow over, hit enter for your first box plot. Markers, this lets you know if you have what's called extreme outliers. You might have learned about outliers if you've ever had any stats before, pre-calculus. And those are the ones that are way outside even the whiskers of our box plot. They're like far away. But then to graph it, all you need to go is go zoom 9. And that's your box plot. Isn't that really cool? And here's the cool thing. Then you go trace, and it tells you everything you need to know. Like notice it says right there in green, median 66. Oh, look, my first quartile is at 65. Oh, look, my minimal value is 60. All right, my third quartile is 70. My max value is at 76. So all of those tell you your 5-number summary. So it's a way of basically expressing the data. Now, let's use your 5-number summary real quick. Hit your trace key and do like you did and fill in the 5 things. Now, if we do this right, it should be exactly the same as when we did our 5-number summary calculation for this, which it is because, you know, we're just good like that. So you have your minimum value is 60 inches. Again, your quartile, notice quartile 1 right here is at 65 inches. Your median is at 66 inches. Quartile 3 is at 70 inches. And your max is at 76 inches. Now, again, let me pull this up so you guys know exactly where I'm going. Remember, trace, you just arrow left or right, but it will tell you what's there. So, like, here's your min value is at 60. My quartile 1 is at 65. My quartile 2 is at 66. But notice how much farther from the median to the maximum is. It's more spread out. So the upper 50% of the data is more spread out. It's not crunched together like the other parts. But now here's the cool thing. This is what you see on Academy Central when you bring up your do the homework worksheet from the assignment. All right, so finally saying homework, using your calculator, also to draw it out, please. Draw out your histogram, dot plots, those things. Use your calculator. Do the homework lesson to practice stats. And really, I think your notes should help you go through that. All right, guys, I will see you on Monday.